So our message today entitled The Great Penguin Rescue, and we're pulling scripture from Luke 15:4-7, as you could probably figure out, has something to do with God looking for us. And so we know as the weather is nicer outside nowadays, vacation season is once again upon us. And our annual family vacation for myself a couple years ago led us to Panama City Beach in the panhandle of Florida. Now, as I've said before in the past, my wife is an expert vacation strategist, and we're working on one for this year too. And so this particular getaway, one of the best, okay? One of the best. Great hotel on the beach, great food, cooperative ocean waves all came together to make quite an enjoyable retreat from the real world. All good vacations, however, must come to an end. This one, friends, was no exception. And as the week wrapped up and we loaded our family in the vehicle and we drove away from the resort that we called home for 4 days, we were sad to see it go. So we decided to make one last stop at a local tourist shop on the way out of town, about 3 miles from the hotel. But when I say 3 miles, what I mean is it's in tourist trap country, so you drive 30 yards, stoplight, 30 yards, stoplight, 30 yards, okay, and it's lined with stores, so it took a while. And so, of course, we cannot be expected to visit faraway lands without indulging in some consumerism, so it was time to buy souvenirs. So on the way to the store, my youngest son, Owen, noticed that we had packed everything except his penguin pillow pet. So what is a pillow pet, you might ask? This is actually genius. I wish I had invented these. So they make pillows that you can form to look like any kind of animal. His favorite are penguins, so he bought a penguin. And you can kind of undo the little latch and it becomes a pillow. You can get any kind of animal out there. And so in this particular case, nothing but a penguin would suffice, and it had sentimental value beyond compare, okay? This is like the blankies that kids used to carry around with them all the time. Maybe some kids still do that, I don't know, but this was a big deal. So a quick discussion took place between my wife and I, and the gist of the dilemma was obvious: is retrieving the penguin pillow from the hotel lobby worth the time and the effort of turning the car around and driving that 3 miles that took 30 minutes, or just getting going, heading out on the road? It was late in the day. I think we had a 9-hour trip ahead of us, but the decision was eventually made. We would go back to the resort and rescue the pillow pet, while the other family stayed behind and did some shopping. So I was in the car. I was a bit frustrated. Hopefully it was still there where he had left it. What if another child found it? What if he thought it looked better with their family instead of our family? What if it got thrown away? All of these fears were real for little Owen. Now, the way back to the hotel provided ample time for me to consider various ways to put aside my frustration. The traffic didn't help, so this situation was replete with spiritual meaning. And I couldn't help but think of one of Jesus' most famous parables from the Bible. The story of the lost sheep occurs in both Matthew and Luke. And for our purposes here, I'll quote it from Luke. It says, "Suppose one of you has 100 sheep and loses one of them. Does he leave the 99 in the open country and go after the lost sheep until he finds it? And when he finds it, he joyfully puts it on his shoulders and goes home. Then he calls his friends and neighbors together and says, 'Rejoice with me, I have found my lost sheep.'" Now, it appears, friends, that God cares not only about his followers nestled safely in the church, but also for those who have wandered away from the faith. He cares enough to leave and go after that one lost soul who, for whatever reason, has decided that he or she doesn't need God. Now, you will note here there are some similarities to the parable of the lost coin, which I talked about a moment ago with the little ones, as well as the story of the prodigal son. All three of these parables relate the idea that God cares for everyone, not not just those who happen to be exhibiting good behavior or Christian living at the time. Okay? Everybody. And so if we talk about the lost coin for a moment. This one says, or suppose a woman has 10 silver coins and loses one. Doesn't she light a lamp, sweep the house, and search carefully until she finds it? And when she finds it, she calls her friends and neighbors together and says, "Rejoice with me, I have found my lost coin." In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents. Now, some theologians posit that the woman in this parable is the church, or that she is a representation of God. I prefer the notion that it is Jesus searching all over the house to find the lost coin. Notice that when this person finds it, she rejoices, calls her friends. There is total joy. When anyone repents, it's a big thing. Finally, you will notice the story of the prodigal son. I don't have a slide for this. I'm going to read it. It says, "But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son.' But the father said to his servants, 'Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger, sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast. Let's celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost, but he's found.' So they began to celebrate." We remember what happened with the story of the prodigal son. He has two sons. The one son says, "You know what? I'm tired of living here. Give me my inheritance early. I'm going to leave." And the other son is the responsible one. He stays and continues working. And so when the father sees that son who left come back, that's when he welcomes him. And notice what happens when the father sees the son in the distance. Did you hear it? Did you read it? He ran to meet him. He didn't stroll. He didn't shuffle. He didn't pace around the family room. "I'm too proud to welcome my son. How dare he leave me and spend my money?" There was none of that. Instead, he couldn't wait to run out to him. And so we put aside the other part of the parable, reserved for the older, jealous son for a moment, because that's a different sermon on a different day, and we focus between the relationship of the father and the younger son. So much joy when he sees his son returning to him. Forget the blown inheritance. Forget the past hurts and difficulties. What matters is that he is back home to stay. And at the risk of oversimplifying things, it would appear that God feels it worth the trouble to look for us when we are lost, to turn the car around and head back to the hotel for the pillow pet. It appears, in fact, that he would have it no other way. And it would also seem, although we may not wish, that God thinks us worth the effort of rescuing, even when we don't want to be rescued. Now, this can be inconvenient. It often interferes with some of the other things in our life. After all, the hotel is nice, isn't it? It's right on the beach. It's comfortable. They've got food all the time. Can't we just stay lost once in a while? Maybe we want to hang out in the comfortable lobby instead of running back to God. Maybe that seems more fun sometimes. So I'm remembering a story, as I often do, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and for whatever reason, I was fearful of haircuts. Okay? I actually remember the reason. Last time I was at the barber, the year before, or 2 months before, he nicked my ear, and it started bleeding, so I was terrified. So my dad says to me, "Hey, we got a haircut. Let's go get a haircut." And I said, "No." And so when he went to work and my mother was in the kitchen, I decided when it was haircut time, I was going to hide under my bed because I was small enough to hide under my bed. And so they began looking for me. And 15 minutes went by, and then 20 minutes, and 30 minutes, and 45 minutes, and I could hear them panicking. They walked into my room, past the bed, out of my room, didn't see me. I'm under here kind of giggling. And finally it gets to the point where my parents are so panicked, they call the police. So I slide out from under my bed, I run to the window, I look, I see the police, I go back under my bed, and I'm like, this is getting good. But then I felt bad. Okay? I felt bad. And so I slid out from under the bed, and I went and said, here I am. And there was relief. I can't remember if I got in trouble. I probably did. So happy to see me. So relieved. But hiding seemed safer and more comfortable at the time. I wanted to stay lost. But the fact of the matter, church, is that nobody stays lost unless they want to. God will pursue us relentlessly. He desires that no one be out of the reach of his love. He will meet us in our darkest hour, in our most broken state. There is no hotel lobby anywhere where he cannot come to rescue us, praise God, beachfront property or otherwise. So what does the Bible say about God rescuing us when we need him, in addition to those parables? Quite a bit. I think I remember something about Israelites leaving Egypt. That was a big deal. This psalm, I like this as well. Psalm 72, 12 to 14, says, for he delivers the needy when he calls, the poor and him who has no helper. He has pity on the weak and the needy, and saves the lives of the needy. From oppression and violence he redeems their life, and precious is their blood in his sight. Friends, we are precious to God. When's the last time you felt precious to anyone? Isn't it so very common, rather, that when we go to talk to people, they either want something from us, or they're trying to get us to do something, or there's some motive or some agenda behind the scenes? But what a world we would live in if everybody understood that they were precious. Similarly, the story of Daniel. This is a good one. I'm going to read Daniel 3:17. It says, if this be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. So if we remember the story of Daniel, Daniel had some friends, Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and they were sentenced to death by King Nebuchadnezzar. Anyone remember why? They wouldn't bow down to the king's deities. Okay? They said, we have our own God. We have the real God. When we hear the trumpet blast in town, we're not going to bow down like everyone else. And for that, they were sentenced to death in the furnace. However, when they were thrown in, Nebuchadnezzar looks into the furnace. Instead of 3 people, he sees 4 people. Jesus delivered them from the fire. We are precious to God. He comes looking for us, even in the fire. So I round the curve, I pull my car up to the resort entrance back in Florida. I leave the engine running. Failure wasn't an option on this mission. There was too much riding on this rescue. And so I look around the lobby, right, and I'm looking for the little pillow pad, and there's nothing there. I don't see anything. So my heart's starting to race now, even though it's just a pillow. So I begin to worry that in the 9 hours that we have left to drive that day, that we're going to have tears and crying, and that it's going to be similar to when somebody brings like an infant or a baby on an airplane, right? I'm worried, like, oh boy. So I go up to the front desk and I ask the attendant if they've seen a small black and white pillow shaped like a penguin. She shoots me a weird look. I get it. She briefly leaves me to check the lost and found while I look around nervously, and then a cleaning person comes over, says they found this pillow shoved on the floor between the sofas. Success at last. So I thank everyone profusely. I get back to the car. I drive the 35 minutes, 3-mile stretch with the stoplights. The hours in the car would now go by much faster and with less tension. No tears shed today. And so the Bible tells us that God and all the heavenly host rejoice when one sinner repents and becomes born again. They are recovered. They are precious to him. You are loved. God will not rest until all 100 of those sheep are back within the safety of the pasture. Now, wandering off, as I've said before, can be fun, I suppose, for a time. It feels like an adventure. And I remember as a younger man, these are the cliffs of Lake Red Rock. Okay? And this is an actual picture. I don't know if anybody's been to Lake Red Rock and you've seen the cliffs. maybe had gone out to a picnic or something. I was 20-something. I was with my friend, and he convinced me to jump off a cliff into the water. Now, this is funny because I am not a cliff jumping guy, okay? I would never, my personality does not tell me that it's a good idea to jump off a perfectly good cliff into the water, okay? But there were some ladies there, and he prompted me, and it was a pride thing and an ego thing, and then the girls jumped in, and there I was. So we walk out, we go to the good point of the cliff, and then he jumps in, and then I jump in, and it goes okay. And I start swimming back. And you know, there's something funny. It's easy to walk a couple hundred yards or whatever it was on dry land, but when you're swimming back around the cliffs, not as easy. Okay, so I get tired. So I swim over to the wall, the side of the cliff, smooth as silk, nothing to grab on. So now I'm in trouble. Okay? I'm like, well, I got some things. I got some options. I can drown. I can call out for help. I was too proud to do that. Or I could lay on my back and do the backstroke. So that's kind of what I did. I laid on my, I was so tired, you guys. So finally, and I don't know how much time went by, I backflowed to the beach. I'm so tired I can't even turn my body over. I put one hand on the rock on the beach and I have to lay there breathing. My friend comes back to the beach and finds me. Was I happy that he came for me? Oh man, I was happy. We are precious to God. No matter what dumb thing we do, no matter what cliff we jump off of, don't pretend you haven't. We are precious to God. And I will take the feeling of being safe and sound at home instead of an impersonal hotel lobby any day of the week, wouldn't you? I think it's better to be rescued. God will come looking for you. And when he does, let him in. Just let him in. Will you pray with me? Lord Jesus, so grateful to study the scriptural truth that you come looking for us. At the end of the day, we wouldn't have it any other way. We acknowledge we need your help sometimes, not only through actions of our own, but maybe through actions of others, or maybe just life circumstances. We need rescue. So grateful that you come looking, and when you come looking and you find us, my prayer for this community and for this church is to let you in.